fire phasers! Yeah, that's the sound effect nailed. Now to explain the visual effect. Hey and welcome to Making FX. I've been rewatching Star Trek The Next Generation from the start recently. How good was Code of Honor? It was really insightful. And of course, thanks to streaming, it's the remastered versions I've been watching. Which then reminded me about this behind the scenes doc from FX Guide, where Craig Weiss explained the restoration process, including how they made the phasers in flame. And they helpfully flash up a bunch of different elements that go into the look of the phasers. That is interesting enough, but it's not like it's a tutorial. I mean, can you imagine how nerdy someone would have to be to look at stills of the elements, recreate them in After Effects and then use them in Essential Graphics to make a reusable effect? Hello! I've made a comp here, and I've done it in HD, but other than the frame rate matching whatever footage I'm adding, it doesn't really make much difference what size you go for. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to Layer, New, Null Object, and hit enter and rename this to Controller. I'm going to make my life easier later by using a bunch of expression controls here and link everything to these controls. So with it selected, go to Effect, Expression Controls, Point Control. And with the effect selected, hit enter and rename this to Start XY. Then, with it still selected, hold Ctrl and tap D to duplicate it and rename this to End XY. These will be the start and end points for the phaser beam. Now go back to Effect, Expression Controls, and add a slider control. Rename this to Start Width, and set it to 5 for now. Duplicate this effect, and call it End Width. And change the value to 70. We're going to be really clever later, and even though we're using 2D values, these widths will make it look 3D. Next, let's add some color controls. Back to Effect Expression Controls, and this time choose Color Control. Rename it to Core Color, with or without the U, and I've used a color picker to get one of the actual core colors, which is FFFF96. Duplicate this effect and call it Glow Color, and I went with FF5A00. Finally, for this layer, go to Effect, Expression Controls, Checkbox Control, and call it On. We're going to link this to our phaser firing. One last thing for the controller, to make sure all our coordinates match what we're going to be doing in a moment, hit P to expose the position properties, and set its position to 0, 0, so it's in the top left corner. Now, some of you will have guessed the next step, and no doubt some of you will have been screaming, why don't you just use beam? Well, we're going to use beam, but with a lot of extras. First, padlock controller on the effects control panel, so that we can see the controller values no matter where we click. Then create a new solid by going to Layer, New, Solid, and call it Beam. Then go to Effect, Generate Beam. And then use the beam's starting point pick whip to link it to the Start XY in the controller, and do the same for the endpoint. Set the length to 100%, and link the starting thickness to the start width, and likewise for the ending thickness. And link the colours too. Up the softness to 60%. So we have the basics on the phaser beam, but where the TNG phasers differ is that they have all sorts of movements within the beam. They were originally created using the Quantel Paintbox. In the Star Trek Technical Manual by Rick Sternbach and Michael Okuda, they explain that phasers are directed energy weapons, where plasma is held in a column by a magnetic tunnel. So the look of phasers is meant to suggest moving gas in the core. That sounds like something Fractal Noise can help us with. Create a new solid, but make it 4000 pixels by 200 pixels, and call it Plasma. And then hit A to expose the anchor property, and set the X value to 300. We only need to see the plasma travel in one direction, and this way we get a really long beam. Go to Effect, Noise and Grain, Turbulent Noise. This is the optimized version of Fractal Noise. Set the type to Swirly, expand Transform, and then hold Alt and click on the Offset Turbulent Stopwatch. And in the expressions area type square brackets time times 1000, comma 0, close square brackets. Which, if we preview that, gives us this fast moving swirly noise. To make it more swirly, hold Alt and click on the evolution stopwatch and type time times 2000. Now, we really don't want to have to deal with a hard edge at the endpoint, so go to Effect, Transition, Linear Wipe. Set the transition complete to 10% and the angle to -90 and the feather to a whopping 700 pixels. When I was looking really closely at the TNG effect, I noticed a bit of blue in the colour. So go to Effect, Colour Correction, Tint, and set the map white to primary blue. Now to link this solid to the beam, create a new null object. Call it Start and make it 3D. And tap P to expose its position properties and hold Alt to activate the expressions area. Then type x equals and pick whip the start xy's position's x value, semicolon, y equals and pick whip the y value in the controller, semicolon, width var equals and pick whip the starting width slider, semicolon. Then type z equals ease brackets width var, comma 0, comma 50, comma 1000, comma -10, close brackets, semicolon, square brackets x, comma y, comma z, close brackets. Okay, so what's going on here is that we're using the phaser width setting to fake depth. To determine how far back the start null should be, the thinner the width, the closer to 1000 pixels away the null is. And if the width is 50, then it's really close to the screen. So bring the start null all the way up to in front of the screen, -10. Why do this and not use 3D point controls? Honestly, I had that and discovered it was really difficult to get an approximate depth value from a 2D video. So this is my solution. Duplicate the start null, name it end, and edit its expression for all the end values. I'll leave this on screen for a few moments. Please enjoy this music while you check your code matches mine. Or you could just download my project to compare. And last bit, well, not the last bit really, but getting there. Select the start null layer and tap R to expose the rotation properties. Hold down Alt and click on the orientation stopwatch and type look at, with a capital A, brackets, transform.position, this layer's position, comma, and pick whip the end null's position. Close brackets. So this expression means that the start null will always face the end null. We've done all this so that our noise can move in 3D space, instead of 2D, and it will get bigger or smaller depending on the positions of the start and end nulls. So we'll make the plasma layer 3D and use the parent column to parent it to the start null, and hit P to zero out the position, then tap R to zero the orientation, but then set the Y rotation to -90. And there, if I adjust the width sliders on the controller null, you can see the plasma layer responding accordingly. So now we need to have it show only where the beam is, and the simplest way to do that is to use the track matte drop down to select the beam layer. This turns off the visibility of the beam, but if I turn it on and drag it above the plasma layer and set its transfer mode to add, there, we get a very Quantel Paintbox look. Now, you might feel you only want the plasma in the core of the beam, in which case duplicate your beam layer, rename it to Beam Matte, and set its softness down to 5%. You could also edit the thickness expressions to add a divide by 2 so that the core of the matte is half what it is for the beam. And then use this matte layer for the plasma. I can't decide which is better. Probably the more subtle one, but what do you think? Okay, we're actually almost done, but we need a glow at the end of each beam. Create a new solid and call it Start Glow, and then go to Effect, Generate Circle. Rename this effect to Outer Glow, and use the center pick whip to link to the controller's Start XY, and link the radius to the start width, but edit the expression to add a ×2, and expand Feather and link it to the radius, and link the color to the glow color on the controller. With the effect selected, hold Ctrl and tap D to duplicate it. Rename this to Inner Glow. Remove the ×2 from the radius expression. And change the feather to point to this effect's radius. And link the color to the core color on the controller. Then set the Inner Glow's blending mode to Add. And set the layer's transfer mode to Add as well. Now duplicate the layer, name it End Glow, and time for more music as you and I update each of the pick whips to correspond to the end values. And look at that cool morph type shape we get. Now when I properly studied the TNG phaser, sometimes there was a sort of distortion at the end of the beam. So on the End Glow layer, go to Effect, Distort, Ripple. And link Center of Ripple to the controller's End XY. Then on the radius, link this to the end width, but add a divide by 6. Set the type to symmetric and the speed to 2. Then use the wave width pick whip to link to the radius and add a ×2 to the expression. Then do the same for the wave height, but add a divide by 2 to the end. That gives us this. There, just a subtle addition. And one last element. On each layer, select them and tap T to expose the opacity properties. Use the pick whips to link each layer's opacity to the beam layer. Then on the beam layer, pick whip the On checkbox controller. The checkbox sets a value of 0 or 1, so edit the expression to add a ×100. And that sorts out the firing. So our pre-comp is ready. We now need to turn it into something reusable. Go to Composition, open in Essential Graphics. Expand Controller on the timeline until you see all the effects properties, and drag each one into the EG panel. Now it's ready to use. My very good friend Jeff Smith of Bulldog TV was shooting the last Ronnie Redshirt recently, and I asked him if he could get me some footage of holding up a phaser. He looks a bit embarrassed. He is based in Texas, I guess they must be unfamiliar with firearms there. For this shot, I just drag in my pre-comp and expanded on the timeline to see the essential graphics. The point controls don't give me a target, so I found it easiest to add 2 more point control effects and link the EG properties to these. And there we go! There's lots of steps, but once you're done, you should be able to reuse this again and again. And that means you should be set for your own fan film, tribute, or just a bit of nerdy fun. You'd still be less nerdy than Geordie, who rebuilt an enormous Galaxy-class starship that was only in operation 7 years.